I, Walt, a 38-year-old man, never imagined that my neighbor would be the one to expose my wife's affair. The girls' nights started approximately 8 months ago. My wife, Catherine, said she wanted to reconnect with her college friends who had recently moved back to our town. Every Wednesday evening, which happened to be ladies' night at a particular club downtown, she would dress up nicely, not too fancy, but definitely better than her usual work attire. She would kiss me goodbye with what seemed like genuine affection and promise she'd be back by midnight at the latest. That seemed like a respectable time to me, 11:30, midnight. That's a reasonable hour in my opinion for a night out with friends. During the first few weeks of this new routine, she would come home animated and talkative, sharing details about where they had gone, what they had discussed, which of her old friends was getting divorced, and whose children were excelling at which activities. It all seemed like normal conversation you would expect from a group of women catching up after years of being apart and living separate lives. She would enthusiastically show me photos on her phone from various restaurants and wine bars they had visited. Always the same 3 women in the pictures, always laughing and smiling, always with colorful drinks in their hands. I genuinely thought it was wonderful that she had reconnected with her old college friends. We had been married for 11 years at that point, and I knew she sometimes felt isolated and lonely in our suburban life. I worked as a regional sales manager for a medical equipment company, which meant I traveled for work maybe twice a month, sometimes more during busy seasons. She worked in human resources at a large warehouse distribution center about 20 minutes from our house. We lived in a nice middle-class neighborhood, nothing particularly fancy or upscale, but comfortable and safe. The kind of place where people wave politely when they see you outside, but mostly keep to themselves and respect each other's privacy. Our neighbor, an older gentleman named Kevin, who lived 2 houses down from us on the same side of the street, was the notable exception to this general rule of privacy. Kevin was a retired military man, probably in his early 60s, and he seemed to have nothing better to do with his time than watch the neighborhood activities with eagle-eyed attention. He knew everyone's daily schedule, whose kids played which sports, and when their practices were, who was renovating their kitchen, and when the mail typically arrived at each house. Some people in the neighborhood found him intrusive and nosy, constantly complaining about his watchful presence, but I always thought he was relatively harmless, just a lonely widower who liked to feel connected to the community around him and probably missed the structure of military life. Anyway, the Wednesday night girls' nights became a regular and predictable thing in our household routine. About 3 months into this pattern, I started noticing that the girls' nights were becoming more frequent and less predictable. It wasn't just Wednesdays anymore. Now it was Wednesdays and sometimes Fridays as well. When I asked Catherine about the change in schedule, she explained that one of her friends, Sydney, was going through a particularly rough and emotional divorce and needed extra support from her friends during this difficult time. That explanation made perfect sense to me at the time. Women support each other through hard times, and men do too. It's what friends do for each other. Then gradually, Wednesday and Friday became Wednesday, Friday, and the occasional Saturday afternoon outing. The Saturday events were supposedly brunch gatherings and shopping trips with the girls. She would leave around 11 o'clock in the morning, looking fresh and excited, and come back by 4 or 5 in the afternoon, seeming tired but satisfied. That always struck me as quite a long time to be shopping and having brunch, but I didn't question it too much initially. She would always return carrying a small shopping bag from some store, usually containing just a scented candle or some bath products, nothing expensive or elaborate, just small proof that she had indeed been shopping. They would apparently shop for that many hours and only come back with one small bag, which seemed unusual, but again, I trusted her completely. However, this is where things started to feel subtly off, though I didn't recognize the warning signs at the time. She never wanted me to meet these supposedly close friends of hers. Every single time I suggested we all go out together as couples, mixing our social circles in a normal, healthy way, she had a ready excuse. She would say their husbands were boring and wouldn't get along with me, or that the women valued their precious time away from men and didn't want to include partners, or that they weren't ready to do couples activities yet because some of them were dealing with relationship issues. Looking back now, that was a massive red flag waving right in front of my face. Another thing that struck me as increasingly weird and out of character was the cash situation. Catherine started taking out significant amounts of cash every week from our joint account, always explaining that the girls preferred to split restaurant and bar bills with cash to keep things simple and avoid the hassle of dividing credit card charges. For someone who usually put absolutely everything on credit cards to accumulate rewards points, she was almost obsessive about maximizing our credit card benefits. This represented a dramatic and unexplained change in behavior. The text messages were yet another red flag that I stupidly ignored at the time. Her phone was constantly buzzing and lighting up with what she claimed were group chat messages from her friends, but whenever I happened to walk by or glance at her screen, she would immediately tilt it away from my view or quickly switch to another app with obvious nervousness. When I asked about it casually, she said the girls shared very personal and intimate stuff about their relationships and marriages, and it would be weird and inappropriate for me to see those private conversations. I respected her privacy and her friendships without question, so I never pushed the issue or insisted on seeing her phone, but looking back with painful clarity, I should have known something was terribly wrong. The biggest and most obvious sign that I somehow missed was the dramatic decline in our physical intimacy. Our intimate life basically disappeared almost completely around the same time that the girls' nights increased in frequency. She was always too tired, too stressed from work pressures, or claimed to have a headache whenever I initiated anything romantic. We went from being intimate at least twice a week, which had been our normal pattern throughout our marriage, to maybe once a month if I was lucky, and eventually even less frequently than that. When I brought up this concerning change in our relationship, tried to have an honest conversation about it, she dismissed my worries and said it was just a temporary phase and things would naturally get better when her work situation calmed down and became less demanding. I believe her explanation because I desperately wanted to believe it. After 11 years of what I thought was a solid marriage, you simply never think your wife is doing anything to jeopardize or destroy your relationship. You don't assume the woman you share a bed with every night is capable of that level of sustained deception and betrayal. But I was completely and utterly wrong about everything. My wife wasn't just capable of this level of deception, she was exceptionally skilled at it, maintaining multiple lies simultaneously without apparent effort. And if it wasn't for Kevin and his unusual neighborhood watch habits, his constant vigilance that so many people found annoying, I might never have discovered the devastating truth about those so-called girls' nights and what my wife was really doing during those absences. It was a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon when everything started to unravel in the most unexpected way. I came home unusually early from work because a major client meeting had been suddenly canceled at the last minute, and I was checking our mailbox when Kevin slowly walked over from his yard with a purposeful look. He had that particular expression on his weathered face, the one where you can tell he wants to tell you something important, but he's not quite sure if he should or how you'll react to the information. We made small talk about the unseasonably warm weather for a minute or two, then chatted briefly about the new young family that had just moved in across the street with their 2 small children. Then he said something that caught me completely off guard and made my stomach drop. He asked me directly if my wife, Catherine, was feeling better now. I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. She hadn't been sick recently, at least not that I knew of. Kevin explained with his typical attention to detail that he had clearly seen her car parked in our driveway last Wednesday afternoon, right there in broad daylight when she was definitely supposed to be at work at the warehouse. He figured she must have come home sick with something, maybe the flu or a migraine, and wanted to check if she had recovered. But last Wednesday was one of her regular girls' nights. She had left for work that morning at her usual time, seeming perfectly normal and healthy, and then supposedly gone straight from work to meet her friends afterward at their usual spot. At least that's exactly what she had told me was her plan for the day. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. I played it cool and casual with Kevin, nodding and saying she must have had a sudden headache or felt unwell, and come home briefly, nothing serious. But inside my mind was absolutely racing with questions and doubts. Why would her car be sitting in our driveway on a Wednesday afternoon when she should have been at work? After Kevin went back to his house, seemingly satisfied with my explanation, I sat in my living room trying desperately to make logical sense of what he had told me. Maybe he was confused about which day of the week it was. Older people sometimes mix up their days. Perhaps it was someone else's car that just happened to look similar to hers. There are lots of silver sedans in the world. But Kevin was remarkably sharp and alert for his age, with an almost photographic memory, and he knew every single car in the neighborhood by sight. If he said with certainty that he saw her specific car, then he definitely saw her car. There was no mistaking it. The following Wednesday, I decided I needed to test something and verify what was really happening. I told Catherine that I had a late client meeting scheduled and wouldn't be home until well after she left for her girls' night, so she shouldn't wait up for me. She kissed me goodbye that morning as usual, with the same affectionate peck on the cheek she always gave me, showing no signs of nervousness or guilt whatsoever. But instead of actually going to any meeting, I deliberately parked my car several blocks away from our house, in a grocery store parking lot where it wouldn't be noticed or recognized, and then I walked carefully back toward my house, staying out of sight. I positioned myself hidden behind some thick bushes near a neighbor's house, a spot where I had a clear view of our driveway, but couldn't easily be seen by anyone passing by. At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right on schedule apparently, I watched with growing disbelief as her car pulled smoothly into our driveway. She was supposed to be at work. She was supposed to be sitting in her office dealing with employee issues, reviewing applications, handling workplace complaints, or whatever tasks filled her days in the HR department. But there she was, bold as brass, walking into our house in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I couldn't see directly into our house from my hiding position behind the bushes, but I had a perfect view of the front door and driveway, so I could monitor everyone coming and going. About 15 minutes later, which felt like an eternity as I crouched there, a black luxury SUV pulled up smoothly and parked right in front of our house, blocking part of our driveway. A man got out of the driver's seat. He was tall, maybe 6 feet or slightly more, and in obviously good physical shape for someone who appeared to be middle-aged. I couldn't make out his specific age or facial features clearly from my distance, but I could see enough. He walked with confident, unhurried steps right up to my front door, pulled out a key, and let himself in without hesitation. He didn't knock politely. He didn't ring the doorbell and wait to be admitted. He simply used a key, his own key, to enter my house. This complete stranger had a key to my house, to the home I had worked for years to afford and maintain. The betrayal of that realization hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I stayed hidden and motionless behind those increasingly uncomfortable bushes for another full hour, my rage and anger building with every single minute that passed, my muscles cramping from staying in one position. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of torture, he came back out through my front door, got casually into his expensive SUV, and drove away down the street without a care in the world. Approximately 5 minutes after his departure, my wife emerged from our house, got into her car with her purse and phone, and left the driveway as well, presumably heading back to her workplace to finish out her day, like absolutely nothing unusual or wrong had happened, like she hadn't just spent over an hour with another man in our marital bed. I sat behind those bushes feeling physically ill, waiting until both of their vehicles were completely gone from sight before I dared to move. I stood there on shaking legs, trying to process what I had just witnessed with my own eyes. My wife was not actually having innocent girls' nights with her college friends. She was conducting an affair, a sustained and deliberate affair, with another man. And she was brazenly using our home, our private space, and almost certainly our bed, while I was supposedly safely away at work, trusting her completely. The Wednesday afternoon meetings, these secret rendezvous, must have been going on for who knows how long, weeks, months perhaps. Kevin seeing her car that one time was clearly not an isolated incident or a one-time thing. This was obviously a regular, scheduled occurrence, a standing appointment for betrayal. The rage that built up inside me as I finally stood up and walked back to my car was unlike anything I had ever felt in my entire life. It was white-hot and consuming, making my hands shake and my vision narrow. But I forced myself to think clearly. I couldn't confront her yet, not without more information and concrete proof. I needed to know more details. I needed evidence that would be undeniable. So I went back to my car, sat in the driver's seat trying to calm my breathing, and drove to a quiet bar near my office building. I sat there alone in a dark corner booth for 3 long hours, nursing a single beer that grew warm and flat, and carefully planning my next moves. When I finally got home that evening, forcing myself to act normal, she was already dressed and ready for her girls' night. Same routine, same practiced lies, same casual kiss goodbye. After she left the house, I went into our bedroom and just stood there looking around. The bed was perfectly made, not a single wrinkle in sight, the pillows arranged just so. She had meticulously cleaned up after her afternoon activities, erasing all evidence of what had occurred here just hours before. I sat on the edge of that bed, the bed where I had slept beside her for 11 years, trying to process the full scope of everything that was happening. That's when I suddenly remembered something potentially important. Our car had come with an OnStar system when we bought it about 2 years ago, and the dealership had offered us a complimentary 30-day free trial of their services. I had decided to continue paying for it even after the trial ended, thinking it might be useful for emergencies, though we had barely used any of the features except for that one time Catherine locked her keys inside the car at the grocery store and OnStar helped us unlock it remotely. I still had the OnStar mobile app installed on my phone since we shared the account and both our names were on it. I opened it up, not really expecting to find anything particularly useful or relevant, but there it was, clear as day, a feature I had never noticed before called location history. It showed everywhere the car had been driven and parked for the past month, with dates and times and exact addresses. I was absolutely shocked and felt my hands trembling as I scrolled through the detailed records for Wednesday afternoons over the past several weeks. Every single Wednesday for the past 6 weeks, her car had been parked at our home address from approximately 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., like clockwork. Not at her workplace, where she claimed to be. Not running errands around town. Not at any restaurant or shopping center. At our house, our private residence, while I was dutifully at my office working to support us. But that wasn't even the worst part of this technological revelation. On the evenings, when she claimed to be having girls' nights out with her friends, the detailed location history showed her car spending hours at an address I didn't recognize at all, somewhere I had never been or heard her mention. As I sat there staring at my phone screen in disbelief, I started thinking this through more carefully. She was apparently having this man come to our house during the day for their affairs, and then she was also going to see him at his place on these so-called girls' nights, the exact same residential address appearing repeatedly every Wednesday and Friday night for months on end. I quickly typed the unfamiliar address into my phone's map application to see where it was located. It was a condominium complex in a nice part of town, about 30 minutes away from our neighborhood. She had no idea, absolutely no clue, that the car was silently and faithfully tracking her every single movement, creating a detailed record of her betrayal. Neither did I until that exact moment. Technology had suddenly and completely exposed what she thought was a perfectly constructed, airtight lie. I spent the next few days acting like everything was completely normal and fine between us. Going to work each morning, coming home each evening, asking about her day, and listening to her fabricated stories, eating dinner together at our kitchen table, watching television side by side on the couch. But inside, I was carefully planning my next moves, thinking through every detail. I needed more concrete evidence before I could make any major decisions or take any action that couldn't be undone. The OnStar app had given me valuable addresses and patterns, but I needed to know more specifically who lived at that condominium and what his connection was to my wife. I took a personal day off from work that Friday while Catherine was at her job. First, I drove to the condominium complex she had been visiting so regularly according to the GPS data. It was a nice upscale place with well-maintained landscaping, clearly expensive. But I quickly discovered I couldn't get past the security gate without an access code, and they also had a uniformed guard stationed in a booth checking visitors. I didn't want to risk being seen or remembered, so I parked across the street at a busy strip mall and watched the entrance carefully for a while, waiting to see if I would get lucky. Around noon, just when I was starting to think this was a waste of time, I saw the black SUV leaving through the security gate, the same expensive vehicle I had seen at my house. My heart started pounding as I quickly started my car and followed him at a safe distance through several traffic lights. He drove to a nearby modern office building in the business district and parked in what appeared to be a reserved spot. I watched from across the parking lot as he walked inside the building with the confident stride of someone who worked there regularly. The building directory in the lobby, which I could access freely, listed a pharmaceutical company occupying the entire third floor. I went home and spent several hours doing research online, searching for information about this company. The company's professional website had a leadership page with photographs and brief biographies of their executives. There he was, right there on my computer screen, Regional Director Jack, age 42. He had a detailed LinkedIn profile like virtually every other corporate executive, listing his education, career history, and professional accomplishments. But what really caught my attention and made everything click into place was something else entirely, a connection I hadn't considered. About 9 months ago, right around the time when the girls' nights had first started, Catherine had attended a multi-day HR conference for her job, something about new management techniques and workplace policies. That's where they must have met. She had come home from that conference talking enthusiastically about new management strategies she had learned and valuable networking opportunities she had made with other HR professionals. What she deliberately didn't mention, what she carefully left out of all her excited stories, was that she had started an affair with one of the speakers or attendees she met there. The following Wednesday, I told my boss I needed to work from home for the day to finish an important client proposal that required concentration and quiet. Catherine left for her job as usual that morning, kissing me goodbye with the same casual affection she always showed. I waited until about 10 in the morning, giving her plenty of time to get to work and settle in. Then I drove to her workplace, a large warehouse and distribution center on the industrial side of town. Her car was not in the parking lot where it should have been, where it was supposed to be on any normal working day. I called the main desk and asked to speak to Catherine, pretending to be a vendor who needed to discuss an urgent matter about shipment. The receptionist, sounding harried and busy, told me that Catherine was in meetings all day and could not be disturbed for any reason, but she could take a message. But I knew better now. She wasn't in any meetings. I drove back home and waited in my parked car down the street with a clear view of our driveway. Sure enough, at exactly 1:45 p.m., right on schedule like she had done this 100 times before, her car pulled into our driveway. This time, I was completely ready with my phone's camera app open and recording. I captured clear video footage of her walking into our house, carrying her purse, looking relaxed and unhurried. 15 minutes later, precisely timed, he arrived in his black SUV. I recorded him using a key to enter my home, walking in like he owned the place, like he had every right to be there. I was still in profound shock that she had actually given him a key to our house, the home I had worked years to afford, the home where we were supposed to be building our life together, raising a family perhaps, growing old together. I sat in my car down the street, reviewing the footage I had just captured, watching it play over and over. But I knew this wasn't enough, not nearly enough for what I needed. A man entering my house, even with a key, could potentially be explained away by a skilled liar. Maybe he was a contractor I had supposedly hired, a co-worker dropping something off for her, a friend of a friend helping with something. Anything. I needed actual, undeniable proof of the physical affair itself, evidence that couldn't be explained away or dismissed with creative lies. That evening, she came home acting perfectly normal, not a trace of guilt or nervousness visible. She talked animatedly about her busy day at work, all those meetings that had supposedly worn her out, complaining about difficult employees and tedious paperwork. Then she started getting ready for girls' night, showering and doing her makeup with care. After she left the house, I immediately checked the OnStar app again on my phone. Sure enough, she was heading directly to Jack's condominium, just like every Wednesday and Friday night, according to the historical data. But this time, I made a decision. I was going to follow her there and see for myself. I parked a full block away from the condominium complex where I wouldn't be noticed and walked carefully to a position where I could see his unit. The lights were on inside, glowing warmly against the evening darkness, and I could see shadows of two people moving behind the curtains, close together. My wife's car was parked in the visitor parking area, right there in plain sight. She stayed there until 11:15 p.m., over 4 hours. I drove home ahead of her, my mind numb with the confirmation of everything, and pretended to be asleep when she finally got into bed. She slipped in beside me quietly, trying not to wake me, and I could smell cologne on her skin and hair, cologne that definitely wasn't mine, wasn't any scent I owned or wore. I laid there in the dark, my heart pounding with rage and betrayal, my fists clenched under the covers. The next day, I contacted a divorce lawyer whose name I had found through an online search. I showed him everything, the OnStar location history, the videos I had taken of Jack entering our house. He was blunt and direct with me, in a way I appreciated. Location data and a man entering my house were suggestive, yes, but they weren't legal proof of adultery that would hold up in court. I could probably prove suspicious behavior, but not the affair itself. He said that without direct evidence, I would likely get destroyed in divorce proceedings, lose assets, possibly pay significant alimony. I needed actual concrete evidence of the affair itself, photographic or video proof of them together, in a clearly romantic or sexual context. He suggested that I hire a private investigator who specialized in this kind of surveillance work, someone with professional equipment and legal knowledge. But when he quoted me the fees, I realized I simply couldn't afford it. We were talking thousands of dollars for a proper investigation. So I made a decision. I was going to get the proof myself, whatever it took. I went online and carefully researched hidden cameras, reading reviews and comparing features. I finally bought a small, sophisticated camera that was highly rated. It was tiny, no bigger than a button, ran on a rechargeable battery that could last for hours, and could record high-definition video with a wide-angle lens. The following Wednesday, while Catherine was safely at work, I installed the camera in our bedroom with shaking hands. I hid it carefully behind some books on our bookshelf, positioned and angled it perfectly so it was aimed directly at our bed, and tested it several times to make sure it was working properly and capturing clear footage. I was angry and disgusted with myself the entire time I was installing it, hating what I was being forced to do, hating what my marriage had become. That afternoon, I parked down the street again in my now familiar surveillance spot and waited, watching our house. Same routine as always, predictable as clockwork. She came home at 1:54 p.m. He arrived exactly 15 minutes later, like they had coordinated the timing. They stayed inside together until a little after 3:30 p.m. When I retrieved the camera that evening, after she had left for her fake girls' night, my heart was beating so fast I thought I might actually pass out or have a heart attack. Part of me didn't want to watch the footage, didn't want to see the final confirmation of my wife's betrayal in graphic detail. But I had to know the complete truth, had to see it with my own eyes. The footage confirmed absolutely everything, and was worse than I had imagined. My wife and this man Jack in our bed, in the bed we shared, doing things she hadn't done with me in months, things she had refused when I initiated them. Laughing together, talking intimately, touching each other, completely comfortable with each other, like they had been doing this for a very long time, which according to the OnStar data, they definitely had. The camera had captured everything in clear, undeniable detail. However, I still wasn't ready to confront her, not yet. I wanted her to think she was successfully getting away with it for a little while longer, wanted her to feel completely safe and secure in her deception. Because I knew that the deeper she got into this web of lies, the more elaborate her deception became, the harder and more devastating her eventual fall would be. And I wanted her to fall hard, wanted her to feel even a fraction of the pain she was causing me. I spent the next 2 weeks gathering even more evidence, building an airtight case. Every Wednesday afternoon brought the same routine. She came home, he arrived with his key, they spent hours together. Every Friday night brought the same lies about girls' night, the same trip to his condominium. I had accumulated enough video footage to completely destroy her in any court proceeding, footage that was explicit and undeniable. But I wanted something more than just a legal victory. I wanted her to truly understand the magnitude of what she had thrown away, what she had destroyed with her selfish choices. I decided to confront her on a Friday night, planning it carefully. I told her I was going out with some co-workers for drinks and wouldn't be home until late, probably after midnight. She seemed relieved by this news, probably happy she wouldn't have to rush back from her fake girls' night or worry about me wondering where she was. After she left our house at 7 p.m., I set everything up meticulously, like preparing for a trial. I printed out the complete OnStar location history for the past 3 months, every single visit to Jack's condominium highlighted in bright yellow marker. I laid all the pages out on our dining room table in chronological order, creating a timeline of betrayal. Then I added carefully selected screenshots from the video footage I had collected. Nothing too explicit that would be crude, just enough to show I had undeniable proof of what was happening. Images of Jack's face as he entered our house. The timestamp showing 2 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. A frame showing 2 figures in our bedroom. I arranged everything like a prosecutor presenting evidence, creating a visual timeline of her deception that couldn't be denied or explained away. Then I sat in the dark living room and waited, rehearsing what I would say. She came home at 11:47 p.m., almost midnight. She walked in quietly through the front door, probably assuming I was already asleep upstairs and she could slip in unnoticed. When she turned on the kitchen light to get some water, she immediately saw all the papers spread across the dining room table. She froze completely, her body going rigid. I stood up slowly from the couch in the dark living room, and she jumped violently, startled. Her hand went to her chest like she was having a heart attack, her eyes wide with shock. Maybe she was having one in a way. Her perfect double life was ending right in front of her eyes. She looked at the papers, then at me standing there in the shadows, then back at the papers, her mind clearly racing to find some explanation or excuse. Her mouth opened and closed repeatedly like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of silence, she whispered my name, Walt? Like a question, like she couldn't believe this was happening. I told her in a calm, cold voice to sit down and look carefully at what was on the table, to really look at all of it. She walked over slowly and reluctantly, like she was approaching a bomb that might explode at any moment. When she saw the OnStar data with all those highlighted addresses and times, her eyes got really wide with the realization of how much I knew. When she saw the printed screenshots from the videos, clear images of her and Jack, she began to shake visibly, her hands trembling. She tried to speak, stammering out the beginning of what was probably going to be another lie, but I held up my hand and waved it side to side, silencing her. I told her very clearly that I knew everything. 9 months of fake girls' nights with friends who probably didn't even exist. Wednesday afternoons in our bed with Jack while I was at work. The fact that she had given him a key to our house, letting him come and go freely. She started crying, tears running down her face, saying it was all a terrible mistake. "Let me explain, please let me explain," she begged. I actually laughed not because anything was funny, but because even now, even with overwhelming evidence right in front of her, she was still trying to lie to me, still trying to manipulate the situation. I told her about the hidden camera I had installed, that I had actual video footage of her and Jack in our bed together, doing everything. She collapsed into a dining room chair like her legs couldn't support her anymore, and put her head in her hands, sobbing. She knew it was completely over. No more lies could possibly save her now. No explanation would work. She tried weakly to explain how it all started, the conference, the connection she felt with Jack, how things just happened naturally. I cut her off sharply. I didn't want to hear any of her justifications or rationalizations. I told her she had exactly 2 choices, and she needed to decide right now. She could pack a bag and leave our house tonight, immediately, or I would send the video footage to everyone in her life, her parents, her boss at the warehouse, all our friends, everyone on social media. Everyone would know exactly what kind of person she really was, what she was capable of. She begged me desperately not to do that, crying harder. She said it would completely destroy her life, ruin her career, devastate her family. I reminded her coldly that she had already destroyed mine, that she had made her choices, and now had to face the consequences. She packed while I stood there watching, throwing clothes randomly into suitcases, grabbing toiletries from the bathroom, with shaking hands. 11 years of marriage reduced to whatever she could carry in 2 suitcases. Before she left, she turned to me one last time at the door, tears streaming down her face, and asked if we could try marriage counseling, if I could possibly forgive her given enough time. I told her that forgiveness was not possible, not after 9 months of deliberate cheating and lying. Not after she brought another man into our home, into our private space. Not after she made me feel like I was the problem in our marriage, when she was the one destroying it. She left that night and went to stay with her mother, who called me the next day demanding to know what had happened. Monday morning, I filed for divorce, walking into the lawyer's office with all my evidence. My lawyer reviewed everything and said the evidence was exactly what we needed for a strong case. The video footage, the OnStar data showing the pattern, and especially the fact that she had given Jack a key to our marital home, it would be a straightforward case in our state where adultery still mattered in divorce proceedings. Word spread quickly through our social circle, like wildfire. Some friends tried to play mediator, calling me and saying that every marriage has problems, that maybe we were being too hasty. But most people were genuinely shocked and disgusted when they discovered the full extent of Catherine's deception. The Wednesday afternoons especially disgusted people. The fact that she was using our marital bed for her affair while I was at work, that level of betrayal and disrespect seemed to offend everyone who heard about it. Her parents called me repeatedly, begging me to reconsider the divorce. They said their daughter had made a terrible mistake, but she still loved me, that she was sorry, and wanted to work things out. I agreed she had made a terrible mistake. She had made the mistake of thinking I would never find out about her affair, that she was clever enough to maintain the deception forever. The divorce was finalized 9 months later, almost exactly a year after her affair had begun. I got the house and most of our assets, including her car that she had used to betray me. The judge was not all sympathetic to her after reviewing all the evidence I presented, the videos, the location data, the testimony about the key. Adultery still matters in our state for divorce proceedings and division of assets. She ended up with her personal belongings, some furniture, and her relationship with Jack, which was probably already falling apart under the pressure. Last I heard from a mutual friend, Catherine and Jack had moved in together into a new apartment. I wonder sometimes if she worries that he might cheat on her the same way they cheated together. After all, he had no problem sleeping with a married woman, pursuing an affair with someone who was in a committed relationship. and she had no problem betraying her husband of 11 years without apparent remorse. They deserve each other, honestly. As for me, I learned several valuable lessons from this painful experience. Always trust your instincts when something feels off in your relationship. Those gut feelings exist for a reason. Pay close attention to the small details that don't add up, the inconsistencies in stories, the changes in behavior. And never underestimate what someone is capable of, even someone you love deeply and think you know completely. People can surprise you in the worst possible ways. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new, interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.